So we have to have a consistent and credible message, because that is what the establishment lacks. That's why they're unable to deal with this situation. And so we have to maintain a level of credibility and consistency, because the problem is that if we believe that remigration or that other issues of national sovereignty are important, we can't associate remigration with betrayal of your country, or that it doesn't matter, national security doesn't matter. But that's not a credible combination. So that if we associate and connect nationalism or remigration with sort of antisocial issues, then that issue becomes lacks credibility, loses credibility, and that's not possible. So I think that the greatest opportunity we have right now is to support a message which is consistent with nationalism, strong defense, strong national security, and strong borders, and get the people who don't belong in our countries, get them to deport them or get them out of our countries. That is the only way forward. And I don't want to end up in a sort of a reactionary message where it's just, well, we're going to have to guess what do the American elites want now, and we're going to try to do the opposite of that, or what do the Russians elite want, and we're going to try to do no, we're going to have our own agenda, and our own agenda is nationalism in every area, which includes national security and ethnic border security and so on. I think that's I mean, we're the only ones who can credibly push that message. And that gives us a huge opportunity right now.
I want to respond because it was a criticism point. I think you're right. You have to have a cohesive message, and obviously you always have to clearly say that the end goal is a sovereign Europe, nation states who are armed and who don't hope for world peace or benevolent neighbors, but would be able to defend themselves. But I think at the moment, and now I'm talking also as a populist, as an activist, when those traitorous political elites who have been replacing us and persecuting us for decades suddenly say, now we need your patriotism, now we need you to defend the country, the obvious answer, and that's also if you talk to anybody who votes the AfD, the Front National, to any normal right-wing person on the street, is you cannot even secure our borders, you cannot even secure inner cities, that do gang rapes every day. Just shut up, sorry, I hope I'm not destroying the YouTube algorithm or channel here. First of all, we need to clear you out. We need to have a clear change. We need to have elites we actually trust. We need to stop the demographic replacement, and we need to stop the anti-European, anti-white hatred in our schools and all of this. And then we have something that we will fight for and defend for. And I think that's the way how you need to put this argument, because if you sit now by idly as a patriotic opposition and vote for all the things, these motions in parliament right now that they're doing, then you would completely use your voter base and your authenticity. So that's also, I think, a very important issue where I need to separate between political strategy and theory. So I think we both agree that there's a chance, but I think we might disagree in how exactly this chance look like.
No, I think that's. I mean, I agree with that point, and I think, I mean, that is the thing that I think. Well, at least I have, but others also have spent time now pointing out the hypocrisy that all of a sudden now our borders are important again. I mean, that is important. We should point out that hypocrisy, but we should also have our own agenda and our own vision, and not just be reactionary and say that sort of out of spite. No, we don't want to protect our borders now because you're in charge. We have to just have our own vision and not just be reactionary. I think that's my main point, because I think that a lot of people have sort of failed that. They've just kind of been bitter against the current rulers, and then sort of just want to see it all burn or something like that. And I don't think that's a way forward. I just think we have to have our own message, and at the same time point out the hypocrisy of the current governments. But the only way we can point out that hypocrisy is to not have the same hypocrisy ourselves. So I think we basically agree on those points, I think.
Absolutely. I think we also can expand it maybe in a conversation only about this. I think we also basically agree, but I think still that very pragmatically, and that's basically my point, we need to use this crisis to make them lose their authority, and we should not become useful idiots who now, because you just wave with some nationalist symbols and slogans, do everything they want for those elites. And I really think that the enemy, and that's my closing point also, depending how long we still talk, the real enemy is within. So all of these other countries are adversaries, Russia, America, China, the geopolitical adversaries, and the people never has eternal enemies. It has eternal interests. But the real enemy, the existential threat, is this, let's call it the woke mind virus, to also quote Elon Musk here, and our own elites who are controlled by it. And I think that's a very important priority to understand, that because if you don't get rid of them, if you don't overpower them and clear them out, then we will not exist as people anymore in the next decades. And that's, I think, the most important priority.
It certainly fits with, if you assume that there is a break between the United States and Europe, then it presents an opportunity to put pressure on elites in Europe. Of course, I'm not a European. I can't, speak with a view on the ground, of course, but it would seem that there's the opportunity to go after your elites. Likewise, if in fact it is business as usual, then you still have the opportunity to go after your own elites, because they are at least the most immediate of the obstacles that stands in the way towards between each of these nations, populations, and sovereignty, however defined. But AA has been waiting very patiently. What are your thoughts, sir?
Well, I mean, the last in-person talk I gave, at an actual event in the summer, was called, the title of the talk was called Tuning Out the Clown Show. Tuning Out the Clown Show. Okay. And unfortunately, what's happened is that the American government has become its own kind of permanent clown show. One of Shakespeare's plays, Henry IV Part 2, there's a scene where Henry IV, who was a king who basically started a civil war in this country by killing Richard II. Right? He was a usurper. He killed Richard II and became the king, which then led to rebellions against him. So Henry IV spends his entire reign putting down domestic squabbles. And then he has this scene with his son, who becomes Henry V, and he says, "Be it thy course to busy giddy minds with foreign quarrels." Right? Now, if you think about what the Trump admin has been doing with these kind of bellicose attacks on Canada and Denmark and talking about Greenland and all this sort of stuff, that's kind of what he's been doing, like distracting their own base with all of this bellicose talk against Europeans and all of this. I mean, I tend to think that maybe 75% of the people we interact with on Twitter now are Indians or bots or something. I don't believe all these people are real half the time, but it's certainly they've been programmed, these people, or have a go at Europeans, keep the base animated against Europeans. And this was basically the play of Henry IV. And what does Henry V do? He restarts a war in France, and the civil war back home dies off because everybody hates the French now, right? This is like an old strategy. But to Martin's point, I mean, I had a look at the current demographics. US population is 58% non-Hispanic white. That was the last estimate in 2023. Okay. Under Trump, the deportations are lower. He's deporting at a lower rate than Joe Biden. He's actually deporting at a lower rate than Keir Starmer. Okay. So, in that context, let's pretend you're an American nationalist now who wants some of these things that Martin and Frody have been talking about. How does it help that cause for J.D. Vance to then lecture Denmark, which is a 92% white country with an extremely robust one of the few European countries to develop an actually robust anti-immigration program? Okay, and it was actually their leftist party who did it. as well. Although I've since learned today that there's a long history to that, and both their parties have been anti-immigration for quite a long time.
Yes,
but
it's 2010 and then a big push in 2019.
Yeah.
Quite correct.
Yeah. So, but what I'm saying is, like JD Vance, like lecturing them like a kind of Karen, like, okay, that may G up the base for 5 minutes on Twitter, but it's not like, how does that actually solve the underlying issue that everybody cares about, which is that bottom line number I just read out? Okay. And how does it help anyone in Denmark, right, who cares about, making that 92% number go up over time? So I guess my bottom line is that the kind of clown show, the slop, the kind of Twitter maelstrom, the nonsense that we face day to day today, right, in this country. I told everybody 2 years ago, look, Nigel Farage was just going to lead you up the garden path again. Okay. And this is the problem with populism in every nation, right? As far as I know, the Trump admin has never even mentioned those demographic numbers and don't even care about it. Nigel Farage, now cometh the hour, and people are actually talking about remigration in this country, and we've got the Labour government doing deportations and running videos of literally brown people being arrested and drummed out of the country to like techno music. I'm not even making this up. But and at this moment now you've got this kind of fake populist, now he gets cold feet. Now he doesn't want to do it anymore. And this is the thing I worry about in every country, not just Britain and America, but like in France and I see signs. Well, I watched a bit of that conversation with Elon Musk and the AFD, and I was like, there were some elements of there. Like, I've seen this show, I've seen this before, So, and this is I guess what I worry about is that if the things that Martin talked about are the things that you care about, then how much time and energy and attention do you want to waste on all of this stuff, right? Because what I see happening now is that everybody's caught up in all of these things. But when 2028 rolls around and the next lot of census numbers come in, is that stat I read out going to go, is it going to even be closer to 50-50? Is it going to be because that is the only actual thing that matters for a lot of people. And the more energy you spend on this sort of stuff, on these sorts of kind of nonsensical ephemera, right, the longer it gets. And now it's another 10 years down the line, and all we've done is waste time. You understand what I'm saying, right? And to me, this is the most frustrating thing, because there's been so many false dawns, right? I remember who were the great Swedish hope. You remind me, Frody, but like, what happened to
Sweden
that?
Democrats?
Yeah, I mean, what happened to all of that? Do you know what I mean? Or like, did the iron law of oligarchy, right, prevail, and did they moderate to the point where they're just another Nigel Farage now, or dare I say it, just another Trump?
Yeah, the Sweden Democrats were. I will say that they did have a major effect in 2010 when they first got into parliament, when they first got over 4%, which is what you need to get into parliament, because it was like overnight shift where before that people didn't talk about immigration at all. That was not like a legitimate topic. But after that, like, people who would never have brought it up, my own acquaintances and so on, they were perfectly comfortable talking about mass immigration as a problem. So they did have a sort of a slight meta-political effect in 2010, but now they have been watered down to be completely useless. And so, I think that supports your point that they have been, in order to try, because they sort of lack any ideological conviction, and they're just populists. They've tried to sort of appeal to and get approval from the establishment to the extent that they're sort of lost. They don't have any point anymore.
But my overall point, I mean, I watched a video the other day of Marjorie Taylor Greene, right, losing it at some like BBC journalist or something like that, and she just kind of says, "What, you're from Britain?" Blah blah blah. She just kind of like shouts throughout the room type thing, And I'm like, well, okay, this gets people excited in the moment, populist energy and so on, but it's not actually like, it doesn't actually end up with the outcomes that we want. And this is the thing that this is the thing that I increasingly worry about, that all of these kind of populist parties that are dealt our way are basically just one giant containment mechanism to waste everybody's time. And meanwhile, that demographic clock ticks and still nothing's been sorted out. So, and anyway, that's just my 2 pennies.
Cheerful take. Your cheerful and optimistic take.